It's 11:47 p.m. and a woman is lying in bed with her phone 6 inches from her face, typing a message to her best friend that she will delete 3 times before sending. I think I need to leave my job. Delete. I think something is wrong in my marriage. Delete. I don't know why I feel trapped. I have everything. She finally sends nothing. She puts the phone face down on the nightstand, stares at the ceiling, and does the thing millions of women do every single night in America. She runs the numbers in her head. Rent. Car payment. The credit card she swore she'd pay off by spring. And somewhere underneath all of it, a quieter, more uncomfortable question. If I needed to walk away tomorrow, could I? For a lot of women, the honest answer is no. Not because they aren't smart. Not because they aren't capable, but because nobody ever taught them that financial freedom isn't just about getting rich. Sometimes it's about having enough distance between yourself and a bad situation that you can choose your next move instead of being forced into it. This is the real conversation behind the phrase everyone's been throwing around lately, the walk-away fund. And no, it's not just a divorce fund. That's the shallow version of the idea, the one that gets clipped into a 15-second video and stripped of everything that makes it powerful. The real walk-away fund is bigger than any one relationship. It's about a woman's relationship with her own agency. Let's talk about it properly. There's a pattern researchers who study financial psychology keep noticing, and it rarely makes headlines because it doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It looks like a woman showing up to work every day, smiling in the group chat, posting a cute brunch photo on Sunday. It looks completely fine. But underneath, she's making decisions based on fear of financial collapse rather than genuine desire. She's staying in a job that drains her because she can't survive 3 months without the paycheck. She's staying in a relationship that quietly diminishes her because the alternative, starting over financially from zero, feels more terrifying than the discomfort she already knows. Psychologists call this a form of learned financial helplessness, and it doesn't happen because women are bad with money. It happens because a lot of women were never given the tools, the education, or honestly the permission to build a financial life that belongs entirely to them. Somewhere along the way, financial safety got quietly outsourced. To a husband. To a job. To a family member. To anyone but themselves. And here's the part nobody says out loud enough. A woman without an exit isn't free. She might be comfortable. She might even look successful. But comfort without options is just a prettier kind of cage. We joke about girl math constantly. The little mental gymnastics that make a $200 dress feel practically free because it was on sale, or because you'll definitely wear it a lot. It's funny and honestly, it's harmless in small doses. That's not the real threat to a woman's financial future. The real threat is girl denial. The habit of avoiding the bank app for weeks because you already know what you'll see. The habit of saying, I'll figure it out eventually about a savings account that hasn't moved in over a year. The habit of feeling more shame about checking your balance than about the spending that got you there in the first place. Picture a woman named her friends would describe as the put-together one. She has a good job, a nice apartment, a closet that looks like a curated Pinterest board. From the outside, she is thriving. Privately, she has less than $400 in savings and a credit card balance she's stopped opening the statements for. She isn't reckless. She's exhausted. Somewhere between rent increases, the cost of just existing, and the quiet pressure to look like she's winning, her financial peace got sacrificed for her financial image. This is happening to more women than anyone wants to admit, and it's not a character flaw. It's a symptom of a culture that rewards women for looking financially secure far more than it rewards them for actually being financially secure. Most financial advice aimed at women sounds like it was written by someone who has never once felt the specific anxiety of being financially dependent on another person's mood. Just save more. Just budget better. Just stop buying coffee. It's advice built for spreadsheets, not for real emotional lives. Here's what actually works, and it starts with understanding that a walk-away fund isn't about deprivation. It's not about punishing yourself out of your soft life. It's about designing your soft life so intelligently that no single person, job, or relationship can hold your entire sense of security hostage. Think of it less like an emergency fund and more like an oxygen tank. You're not buying it because you plan to drown. You're buying it because it lets you swim toward better water whenever you decide the current one isn't serving you anymore. A walkaway fund isn't just money you keep in case a relationship ends badly. That's the narrow, dramatic version that gets all the attention because it sounds juicy. The real version is quieter and honestly more powerful. It's the fund that lets you leave a job that's slowly hollowing you out without panicking about how you'll cover next month's bills. It's the fund that lets you say no to a business partnership that feels wrong in your gut, even if it looks great on paper. It's the fund that lets you leave a city that no longer feels like home, or step back from a friendship that's quietly draining you because you can afford to prioritize your peace over your convenience. This is what financial experts mean when they talk about being financially attractive. It's not about looking wealthy. It's about the calm, grounded energy of a woman who isn't operating from scarcity. She's not desperate. She's not performing. She's simply secure enough to make decisions from clarity instead of fear, and that energy is magnetic in every area of life, not just relationships. Somewhere in the last few years, soft life culture exploded online, and a lot of women fell in love with the aesthetic. Slow mornings, skincare routines, quiet luxury, rich anti-energy. And there is nothing wrong with wanting that life. In fact, this channel believes every woman deserves it. But somewhere along the way, soft life got confused with financially passive life, and those are two very different things. A woman resting because she has built systems that support her rest is living the dream. A woman performing rest while quietly drowning in financial stress is living a very expensive kind of anxiety with better lighting. The soft girl economy, done right, isn't about spending like you're already wealthy. It's about building the actual wealth quietly underneath the soft aesthetic, so the softness is earned instead of borrowed against your future self. Imagine two women posting the exact same coffee shop photo on the same Sunday morning. One of them has a fully funded walkaway fund sitting untouched in a high-yield savings account, automatic contributions to retirement happening in the background, and a clear number in her head for what financial freedom actually costs her. The other is one unexpected expense away from panic, financing the aesthetic on borrowed time and borrowed money. From the photo, you cannot tell them apart. That's the part that should unsettle you a little. Financial fragility has learned how to dress well. If you're the kind of woman who wants to understand the psychology behind money, image, relationships, and the quiet decisions shaping women's financial lives, this is exactly the kind of conversation we have here, so it might be worth sticking around and subscribing for more of it. So let's get tactical for a moment, because insight without action is just a nice feeling that fades by tomorrow afternoon. Start with a number, not a vibe. Most women have never actually calculated what 3 to 6 months of their real expenses looks like. Not the aspirational version of their life, the actual one. Rent or mortgage, groceries, insurance, minimum debt payments, transportation. Write it down. That number is your target, and having a real number turns a vague fear into a solvable problem. Separate the fund completely. This money should not live in the same account you check when you're deciding whether to order takeout on a Thursday night. Open a high-yield savings account specifically for this, somewhere slightly inconvenient to access, so it isn't sitting there tempting you every time you're having an emotional spending moment after a hard day. Automate before you can talk yourself out of it. Willpower is unreliable, especially on the nights when retail therapy feels like the only available comfort. A small automatic transfer the day after payday removes the decision entirely. You're not choosing to save. You've already saved before you had the chance to talk yourself out of it. Treat windfalls differently. Tax refunds, bonuses, birthday money, that freelance check you forgot was coming. Before lifestyle creep gets its hands on it, send a meaningful percentage straight into the fund. You won't miss money you never got used to spending. Track your number monthly, not obsessively, but consistently. There is real psychological research suggesting that simply observing your financial progress, even without changing behavior, increases a sense of control and reduces financial anxiety. Watching that number grow becomes its own form of quiet, private power. And here's the mindset shift that changes everything. Stop calling it your emergency fund and start calling it your freedom fund. Language shapes behavior. An emergency fund is something you build out of fear, dreading the day you'll need it. A freedom fund is something you build out of self-respect, celebrating every time it grows, because every dollar in it is a piece of your future choices being protected. We can't talk about this topic honestly without addressing the elephant in the room. A significant number of women stay in relationships longer than they want to, not because they don't see the problems, but because they genuinely cannot afford to leave. Financial dependency has quietly kept women in uncomfortable, sometimes harmful situations for generations, and pretending that isn't part of this conversation would be dishonest. This isn't about assuming every relationship is a ticking time bomb. Most aren't. This is about the simple truth that love should never be the only thing standing between a woman and financial disaster. A healthy partnership isn't threatened by a woman having her own financial safety net. If anything, it makes the relationship stronger because she's choosing to stay every single day, not staying because she feels stuck. Imagine a woman quietly building her fund for 2 years while her relationship is genuinely happy and healthy. She may never touch it. She may stay married for 40 more years and never need a single dollar of it for the reason people assume. But she sleeps differently at night knowing it exists. She negotiates differently at work knowing it exists. She shows up in every area of her life with a kind of grounded confidence that only comes from knowing she is never truly stuck, even when everything looks stable on the surface. That's the part people miss. The fund isn't there because you expect the worst. It's there so fear never gets to make your decisions for you. Real wealth was never about the bag, the car, or the zip code. Real wealth is options. It's the ability to say no without your voice shaking. It's the ability to leave a room, a relationship, or a role, and know your next chapter isn't dependent on someone else's permission or someone else's paycheck. A woman with a walkaway fund carries herself differently, even if no one around her knows it exists. She negotiates her salary with a straighter spine because she isn't desperate for this exact job. She sets boundaries in her relationships because she isn't afraid of what happens if the relationship ends. She makes decisions from a place of clarity instead of panic, and that clarity becomes the quietest, most expensive form of luxury there is. This is financial intelligence dressed in softness. This is what it actually looks like to have your main character energy backed by real numbers instead of just a good caption. Here's an uncomfortable truth worth sitting with for a second. Every time you open your phone, you're being shown a highlight reel curated by an algorithm that has absolutely no idea what your bank balance actually looks like. It doesn't know you have $300 left until payday. It doesn't care. It just knows that the vacation photo, the new bag unboxing, the get ready with me for my 3rd trip this year video kept you watching 30 seconds longer than the last one, so it shows you more of it. And slowly, without you ever consciously agreeing to it, your definition of normal starts shifting. Spending that would have felt excessive 5 years ago now feels like the baseline. Staying in on a Friday night starts to feel like falling behind instead of simply resting. This is what researchers studying social comparison and spending behavior have started calling financial FOMO, and it is quietly reshaping how an entire generation of women relates to money. Here's the part that matters most. Comparison isn't just emotionally exhausting, it's financially expensive. Every scroll session is a tiny negotiation between your actual values and someone else's curated highlight reel, and if you're not paying attention, your money starts flowing toward impressing people you don't even like, in a life you didn't actually choose. Picture a woman scrolling through her feed on a random Tuesday night, watching someone she went to college with post from a rooftop bar in another city, champagne in hand, caption something about manifesting abundance. 2 thoughts happen almost simultaneously. First, a small pang of comparison. Second, a quieter, more honest question underneath it. Would I actually want that exact night? Or do I just want to feel the way she looks like she's feeling? That distinction, learning to separate what you actually want from what you've simply been shown enough times to start craving, is one of the most underrated financial skills a woman can develop. It's not about never treating yourself. It's about making sure your spending is coming from genuine desire and not from a dopamine loop engineered by people who profit off your attention. Let's talk honestly about dopamine spending, because shame never fixed anyone's finances, and it isn't going to start now. A woman comes home after a brutal day at work, the kind where she was talked over in 3 meetings and still had a smile through all of them. She opens an app, adds 3 things to a cart, and feels immediate relief the second she hits purchase. That relief is real. It's chemical. It's not weakness, it's neuroscience. The problem isn't that she wanted comfort. The problem is that comfort has been quietly outsourced to spending when there are other ways to access that same sense of relief that don't cost her future self anything. A hot bath, a walk with a friend on the phone, 20 minutes of doing absolutely nothing, guilt-free. These sound almost too simple to work, but the reason dopamine spending has such a strong grip is that most women were never taught alternative ways to self-soothe that don't involve a checkout page. Here's a reframe worth trying. Before an emotional purchase, pause for exactly 1 hour. Not because you're not allowed to buy it, but because that pause reveals whether you actually want the item or whether you just wanted the feeling of control that clicking buy gave you in a day where you felt like you had none. Sometimes the item still gets bought. Sometimes, an hour later, you realize you weren't shopping for a product at all. You were shopping for a feeling, and there's a cheaper, more sustainable way to get it. Let's talk about a woman who made a choice a lot of women make, and a lot of people quietly judge. She stepped back from her career to raise her kids. Maybe it was her decision entirely. Maybe it made the most financial sense at the time, since childcare in most American cities now costs almost as much as a second mortgage. Either way, she gave up a paycheck, and with it, she gave up something a lot of financial advice completely ignores. She gave up her independent financial identity. Every account is joint. Every card has both names on it, but only one name built the credit history behind it. Every dollar she spends is technically money someone else earned, even if her labor, the cooking, the school pickups, the mental load of running an entire household is worth more than most salaries if you actually tried to price it out. Nobody put a number on her worth, and somewhere along the way, she stopped putting a number on it too. This is not a story about resenting motherhood or resenting a partner. Most of these households are genuinely happy. This is a story about the quiet vulnerability that happens when a woman's entire financial existence lives inside someone else's accounts. If anything ever changed, a job loss, an illness, a divorce, a death, she would be starting not from zero, but from a place of having to prove she deserves access to money she helped build for a decade. The fix here isn't leaving the arrangement. It's making sure it's never entirely one-sided. A stay-at-home mom deserves her own checking account, funded consistently, even if it's a modest amount every month, treated with the same seriousness as a salary. She deserves her name building credit independently, not just riding along on someone else's history. She deserves a walk-away fund exactly as much as the woman with the corner office, maybe more, because her financial vulnerability is often invisible until the exact moment she needs it not to be. Now picture the opposite scenario. A woman in her early 30s, 6 years into a career she worked incredibly hard to build. She has a title that sounds impressive at dinner parties. She has direct deposits landing every 2 weeks that would have made her 22-year-old self cry with relief. From every angle, she is winning. But she hasn't taken a real vacation in 2 years because she's terrified that stepping away will make her replaceable. She says yes to every extra project, not because she loves the work anymore, but because her sense of safety is entirely wrapped up in being seen as indispensable. Her boss knows this about her, whether he'd admit it or not, and it shows up quietly in the way she gets passed over for a raise she clearly deserves, because why would the company pay more for loyalty it's already getting for free out of fear? This is what happens when income becomes identity instead of infrastructure. She isn't trapped by a lack of money. She's trapped by the absence of a financial floor beneath her that would let her negotiate, push back, or walk away from a toxic workplace without it feeling like financial suicide. A walk-away fund changes this dynamic completely. Suddenly, she can say no to the unreasonable ask. She can ask for the raise with actual leverage behind her voice, because worst case, she has months of breathing room if the conversation goes badly. Money in the bank doesn't just protect her future. It changes how she's treated in the present.